Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and I'd like to thank the writers of this episode for the addition of two little words, personal log. More on that later. Joining me on the show, as usual, is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom on the Chronic Rift Network. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Ella, are you there?
Yes.
Are you all right?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Is your heart beating?
I'm okay. My heart is beating. It was less stressful than I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
But a lot of feelings were involved.
Yes. And
I think
yeah, well, and we'll get into what we're talking about in a second, but like the return of a lot of major characters or major moments, it's not exactly the splash that we expect. It's a little more subtle. And, of course, we'll talk about what we're talking about in just a little bit. Also joining us on the show once again is Mikan Hana of the Just Enough Trope podcast. Just Enough Trope is a show that examines the depths of your favorite pop culture fandom and brings you all the news that's fit to cast in the world of nerdy entertainment. Mika, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You invented something recently, Mika, that I had to share with a Star Trek audience, and that is Voyager babies.
Yes, it's like Muppet Babies, except it's the Voyager crew.
Yes, I can see this. It's perfect, yeah. You got Tom Paris. He's all crabby, right? He's got a little bow, little tuft of hair on his head. Janeway, she's a little older. She's a bossy baby. And then you've got Tuvok, of course. He's adorable, doesn't cry at all, just stares straight forward. And then Harry Kim is like not born yet, or he's preemie. I don't know if that's a little too far, but he's very young for a baby.
Yes, he's the babiest of the babies.
I love your idea. Born out of, I think, you remarking that it seems like, because you watched the pilot of Voyager recently, and you're like, it seems like Cass isn't going to be alive when they get there. And I was like, I don't think none of them are going to be alive when they get there. That's the premise, yeah. But what about their babies? Just little babies running this Starfleet vessel. It's all automated. They're fine. I wanted to take this moment, this self-indulgent moment, to tell a story that I forgot to tell last week, and I really wanted to. Last week we had Mo from Sound of Cosplay on, and she's an amazing cosplayer. You can find her stuff at Instagram, Sound of Cosplay. But she cosplays Night Vale, or she has in the past. And I was going to tell the story about the time that I met Cecil. You know this story,
oh my God.
Right, Mika?
Yes.
Do you want to tell it?
I don't think I'll tell it as well.
Well, there's not a lot to tell. It's not that big of a deal.
We were at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle. I think it was the first year we were there, and the Night Vale crew was there, and they did a show and everything. And you went out for a cigarette break, and Cecil also went out for a cigarette break, and you guys got to talking.
No, that story's not right at all.
It's not?
No. I was on the street, and there's two different buildings, and so, I was going across the street, and I was sort of looking through the windows at, like, the Lego display that was on the first floor, and there's a guy standing next to me doing the same thing, just hanging out, and I didn't want, immediately, if you know what he looks like, he's very distinctive looking, and I didn't want to do that thing where it's like, oh my, are you him? You're him, aren't you? That whole thing, so instead I was just sort of like, hey, like the show. And he immediately was like, oh, okay, this is a fan. I understand what's going on here. And he's like, yeah, thank you. And we had a little chat. He had a huge bag of underground comics that he had picked up. I guess he's into just cool underground comic stuff. And so he had been on the floor earlier. So we chatted for a little while. And I think this was before. Oh, they were doing a live show that night somewhere at a club in town. And I wished him good luck on the show. And that was it. So I told you it wasn't that great of a story.
Well, it's better than the story that I thought of, so.
Well, anyway, he's not on the show tonight, but we are here to talk about Star Trek Discovery. And I had the audacity on our last supplemental episode to say that there was no Trek news worth talking about. And like clockwork, two huge announcements appeared just as I was posting the show. The first one is, of course, that Star Trek Discovery will be returning for a third season, which is exciting.
Woo-hoo.
You guys don't sound excited, but I know you are in your hearts.
No,
And
I'm definitely excited.
I'm waiting for the second part.
oh, okay, yeah. What's the other shoe? It's being written now. It's shooting, it's expected to begin shooting it this summer in Toronto. And it was also announced that Michelle Paradise, who joined the writing staff of Discovery for the second half of its second season, will be serving as co-showrunner along with Alex Kurtzman on the next season. And she previously served as co-executive producer on the CW series The Originals, and she wrote the upcoming Discovery episode, Project Daedalus, that we talked about last week. So it's all good news.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing that the Kurtz is not doing it alone anymore. So
Yeah.
that he's getting some help.
Okay, you think he needs help? I mean, this whole season you've been pretty pleased with, and he's the guy in charge.
Well, that's true. I mean, I don't know. It's always good to have a second pair of hands, right?
I suppose that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of
They
things to carry
came
when you're a
close
showrunner.
to a slip up there, but they recovered. They almost fumbled, but
Yeah, and
good,
everything's
stuck the landing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? Yeah, I agree. I also read an article saying that it was an interview with Jonathan Frakes. He talked about how he is going to direct at least one episode of the upcoming Picard show, which is still at this point due in late 2019. And he also said that he'd seen parts of Lower Decks, and he says that it's hilarious. It's coming together really well.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
It
that's very encouraging. I have so much hope for that show that I think will be, delivered upon, but I'm always a little worried, so it's fine.
Ella, generally worried.
I mean, yes.
Well, tonight we've seen the 7th episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, Light and Shadows, and we're here to break it down for you. And before we start, as always, we're setting a course for the spoiler zone listeners, so be warned. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for The Sound of Thunder, that's not The Sound of Thunder, it's Light and Shadows, is Burnham goes to Vulcan in search of Spock, where she unearths surprising family secrets. In researching what is left of the Red Angel's signal over Kaminar, Pike and Tyler end up in battle with time itself. Giorgio has a few tricks up her sleeve for Leland and Section 31. I like how these recaps or these synopses are getting multifaceted, like they're split into like A, B, and C storyline. This episode was written by Ted Sullivan and Vaughn Wilmot. Sullivan is a co-executive producer on Discovery, and he previously wrote the episode What's Past is Prologue, and he co-wrote the episode Lethe with Joe Menosky. And he, let's see here, Wilmot is a former executive producer and writer for Fox's Prison Break, and he wrote the pilot for the sci-fi series Dominion. He got a start in Hollywood as an actor, and he appeared as a Bajoran security officer in the 6th-season TNG episode Descent, Part 1. This episode is directed by Marta Cunningham. Cunningham is also a former actor. She's directed episodes of shows like Pretty Little Liars, Transparent, and How to Get Away with Murder. This is her first directing gig with Star Trek. And before we get into this, let's scan for new theories quick. I think we have a pretty good track record of tracking possible spoilery theories about what's coming up in Disco. I'll point, of course, to our exemplary work with the Tyler Volk connection. There's a new one going around. And it's not exactly new. I've seen this in a place or two, but it is pretty popular. And if you don't want any information at all, then this is the point where you go la 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 for about 2 minutes, because we're going to talk about a theory here. But some people think that the Red Angel is Zora, that is the AI of the Discovery from 1,000 years in the future, who has given herself a mechanized body, and she's come back and she's doing things in time. What do you guys think?
Huh. That's an
Why?
interesting theory.
I gotta draw a line right here. I'm gonna need a little more than on all things going forward. What do you think?
Why? I want to know why she would do that.
I have a theory, but first let's hear from Mika. Mika?
It seems kind of sinister, like kind of a sinister turn for her, and she seemed to be like, rather benevolent, at least in the short trek that we saw. And she seems to be fairly considerate of human beings or other life forms. So I just kind of wonder why she would like leave people on like this huge trail or like, second guessing and everything. Unless she just got bored and she just decided she was just going to mess with people for some reason.
Bored AI is forget the Rocco's basilisk, forget everything else. Bored AI is what we really got to worry about here in the future. You're absolutely right. I think that if you live in the future 1,000 years from now, because you have lived 1,000 years, lived in quotes, then you have a lot of perspective. You know everything that's happened, or at least what you can pick up through your sensors or through data links. And maybe some things happen that you don't think are that great. And maybe over 1,000 years, your advanced AI can crack time travel. Maybe you're even parked near some kind of anomaly or high gravitational force that can facilitate that. And so you decide, guess what? I'm going back in time. Enough Audrey Hepburn movies. I'm going to take off the sunglasses and the pearl necklace and put on a robot suit. And now I'm Audrey Hepburn traveling through time, trying to fix things and, change the circumstances that led to the horrible war that Kraft is involved in the short trek Calypso. Because if you look at the short treks, every one of these short treks that we've run into all sort of reflect what's happening now in a way. Not exactly, but kind of. Tilly meets another girl that she doesn't really understand, and she has to sort of learn something about herself. We've got Kraft could be setting up the time travel that we're already seeing in this part of the season, and so on and so forth. No, huh? Even for that? That's worth a huh.
I guess I want to know what, if it is her, like, why is she doing this? What is the end point, or what does she want the results to be? Like, is she leading like Discovery, like with like breadcrumbs through like the universe? Like, or is she like taunting them to catch her or something like that? Or
Possibly.
like, what does she want?
If you know that X and X and X and Y and Z, I guess things are going to happen, then you have an agenda that to you is doing X, Y, and Z, but to us looks like you are in different places in the galaxy or different times as well. So it's cool that she saved a bunch of people who were going to get nuked in World War III, but maybe it was literally just so 200 years later one of their descendants could, give the helmet to Pike or something like that. When you're outside of time or when you're from a farther remove, then you have context that we don't have. Kind of like Daniels in Enterprise. Like he's trying to go back and get Archer to do stuff so it can sort of manipulate the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got.
Okay.
Welcome back to MummyCast, where we don't say anything. Let's get into our discussion of tonight's episode. And I wanted to say quick that what I was saying before, I know it's popular to start a weekly TV show these days with some kind of voiceover, usually like a lyrical monologue about the emotional stakes of what we're going to see. But Trek has always had that, and it usually begins with captain's log or personal log. So I like the fact that we still got a monologue that fit from Burnham about what was going on, but instead, it gets put into the envelope of a personal log, and that's I like that. What'd you guys think of this episode? What'd you guys think of the episode, Mika?
I liked it. There's a lot of time travel and things dealing with time, and like, I felt like Tilly saying, you put time in front of anything and it sounds cool. That was a very Tilly line.
What about a time lampshade?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
So that was fun. And then like also like bringing Stamets in and being like, he can help navigate this because of the tardigrade like DNA that's inside of him and everything.
Yeah, he's like part Time Lord now. He's got like time power. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I know.
I was going to say these lines are so Doctor Who.
Yeah. Now, like he's kind of like Troy now, though, because like every time they meet like some deceptive or duplicitous alien, Troy's got to be off the ship or has to be like directly psychically attacked by that thing. So now anytime that they have like a time problem, they're like, get Stamets, no problem. But they'll have to like, oh, he's off the ship or he fell asleep or something like that. So they can't solve the problem right away.
Right. Well, I wonder where like Culver was like this episode. Like he was very absent from this episode. And I kind of feel like he's probably still trying to come to terms with being alive again.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he's just sitting around staring at stuff.
Right. Yeah.
maybe that's not so exciting to watch.
I was looking at that can of scar polish, and it's like, what am I going to do with all this scar polish now? I saw some theories that, and I don't know how I feel about this, but I was reading online some theories about like how people think that maybe he's a different person now. I mean, he's, literally a different person, but like a different in his personality. People were speculating that since he kind of pulls away from Stamets when Stamets is talking to him in sickbay, like maybe he's not in love with Stamets anymore. What do you guys think about that?
I think he's still in love with Stamets. I think he's just like in incredible shock, like the most shocked that just about any human being could ever be in, and even more so because this is sci-fi. This is not necessarily something that could ever happen to us in real life.
Right.
But to have like a new body, to feel like an alien, if you will, in your own skin, that's terrifying. And he probably needs a ship counselor. I don't know if they have one or not, but
I don't know. I don't think so. If they did, that Admiral Cornwell would have like ordered Lorca to go visit the ship's counselor.
Yeah,
she was a counselor. Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem, but I mean, it's a very sci-fi problem though, and I think that that's cool. And usually on a Star Trek program, we got somewhere to be next week, so we're never going to look into that. Like, how do you feel about being from a different timeline, Harry Kim? Nothing. We just keep going. And so right. I like the fact that we are sticking with this, and I'm sure he's going to be on future episodes for us to dig into that more. We get to see,
probably.
Yeah, we get to see Vulcan in this episode, which I thought was really cool. And it's not the usual. Usually when we see Vulcan, we know that it's a red, a dusty desert planet, and maybe we see one building or a temple or two. But we get to see, a real metropolis on Vulcan that looks kind of future-y, and I was really impressed by that.
I love that. I love it not being destroyed by J.J. Abrams. All for that.
Yeah.
I was kind of.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was kind of impressed that Sarek and Amanda had a landing pad at their house.
Yeah, their house is like, they're really like Vulcan upper class over there.
Yeah.
He's important.
The ambassador's estate.
Yeah. And I like how when she comes in, they're like, are you here for business? Is this official business? And it's just like, no, I'm here to do my laundry, basically. Like, I live here. Or I used to live here. So she just gets right back in. We get to see a little more of baby Spock. Speaking of Voyager babies, it's Spock babies.
He's so cute.
He is really cute. I know. It's funny. I don't know how you'd get a sort of haggard Leonard Nimoy looking kid, but yeah, he's definitely very cherubic and very cute. And we learned something interesting about him. We learned that Spock, when he was younger, had a condition called letacturi, which they heavily imply, and then they just basically come out and say is sort of like a Vulcan dyslexia, which I found to be interesting.
Yeah, I love that. I really love what they're doing. They're really like expanding his character in ways that we really haven't seen before, I feel like. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, the real story, of course, is that everybody's been looking for Spock, and he was in the one place no one would look, which is home, where he was supposed to be.
Literally, he was literally just in a friggin' cave on Vulcan, and Amanda's like, my son is gone. I do not know where he is.
My Lord, I don't know. Yeah, tell us where he is. Yeah. And he's in a cave of, I think they said Katra stones, which apparently block telepathy.
Yeah, what is a Katra stone?
Katra stones, which is like, I could totally see something like this existing. Just the nerd in me does, point to the fact that they've said before that there's no technology that we know of that can block telepathy, but I don't know, maybe natural formations can. And so we need a name. Stones, Katra, Vulcan word, Katra stones. Got it.
Yes.
But that explains why he is there. You also we see him in a state of logical psychosis, basically. Like he is just completely lost in his thoughts and just kind of bouncing against the walls of this cave. And he keeps repeating this number over and over to himself, 841947, which is weird. And Burnham, of course, has seen a TV show before, so she's like, flip that around. Oh, okay, it's 749148. Which turns out
didn't you hear he had dyslexia?
That's right.
He
exactly.
flips the number.
All the pieces were there. They were all there. Yeah. And of course, those are coordinates, it turns out, for the planet Talos 4, which is like, okay, he just gave her a speech. Sarek just gave her a speech about how, like, well, you almost lost your entire career, but you're back now, and I don't want to lose you again. What's that? You're going to break General Order 7 and violate the only law which they still put you to death for in the Federation, going to Talos 4? Okay, let me know how that goes. Send me a postcard. And skipping ahead just a bit, we do see what looks like some Talosians. We see some big-headed guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so excited.
This would be a good time
Ready
to point...
for some drama.
Yeah. This would be a good time to point listeners to our Patreon at patreon.com/EISTpod. We have a feature called Stellar Commentaries, where we are going through original series episodes. I love them, but they are very silly sometimes. And so we're doing a riff tracks type. We're just kind of riffing, just kind of having fun, making jokes and poking fun lovingly at these episodes. And our first one is about the cage. So you can check that out if you want to watch The Cage again. I noticed something specific, which is it looks like those Talosians are played by men. And, of course, the Talosians in the original Cage were played by women with men's voices dubbed over. So I don't know if this is...
I did not know that.
Yeah, they're played by actresses. So I don't know if this is
Why? Pourquoi?
Because they liked the unsettling nature of having a quote-unquote frail, let's just say smaller face than a man's face, but then having like a Vic Perrin kind of booming voice coming out of them.
Okay, love that for the 60s.
Yeah, right. Well, that was really weird in the 60s. They also had a big funky purple chicken in one of the cages next to Pike, so that was real scary too. Speaking of Pike, let's go back to the Pike story that's going on in this episode. He's got to work it out. He and Tyler are going to go on a bro trip, and they're just gonna bang it out. They're just gonna get those feelings out. And they're gonna do some bonding, and they're gonna figure this thing out. And of course, that involves them
just guys being dudes.
Yep, just guys being dudes fighting metal octopuses. It happens, and this involves, of course, a time rift that they are sucked into. And I can't even recount everything that happens. Like, there are a lot of particular enticing facts that are dangled in front of us throughout this sequence. What did you guys make of what was of the time rift sequence?
Of when he sees ahead, or just the whole thing in general?
Yeah, the whole thing in general. So we see the probe is converted into a metal squid or something. Yeah. We don't know. We don't know. We know it's from the future, but we don't really exactly know where or why. There's just a lot going on, and I'm kind of wondering if we are to expect more incursions from the future, if the threat that we're looking at is in the future. Is it related to? It's not angel shaped. It's squid shaped. So. What's happening? Mika, impressions?
Well, it seems like somebody is out to get them or something like that. If their own probe is like attacking them for some reason, and like they said a couple of times, it's our probe, but somebody has done some alterations.
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 Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. And I don't think it was squid-like at all before, and now
we don't have a squid
like,
probe, do we?
I know, right? And now it's very squid-like and is attacking them physically, like somehow, like through the shuttle.
Yes.
And just like messing with them, and they somehow know it's like from 500 years in the future. Like, I don't know if they could scan it and that's what it told them, but
Right.
yeah, so then they also make the conclusion that if it wants to kill us or hurt us in some way, like maybe the Red Angel does too, because they're from the future too, we think, maybe. So it's just kind of impending doom is what it kind of seems like to me.
It also was like stealing data, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And in the end, we are led to believe that Dr. Robot might be taken over.
Yes.
Yeah, that was creepy.
There was some red in her eyes.
Which is
I'm scared.
Yeah,
for Ariam.
Something that I was thinking of, and I don't know if this is a crazy idea or not, but the Red Angel is, well, red, and involves time travel. This rift is blue and involves time travel. So I don't know if there's like a red shift, blue shift thing going on here, and if the squid and presumably, the time hole leads to the future, it's red, blue shifted, then the angel, it being red and its effects are possibly coming from the past in some way.
Huh.
Oh.
I mean, they definitely chose, okay, if it's not related directly to the angel, don't make it red, because then that's going to make people think it's angel related. But choosing blue specifically, it could have been orange, it could have been anything. Like having red and blue made me think there's some kind of like physics, optics thing going on.
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought about that.
Honestly, all the time stuff is starting to confuse me. Like, I'm starting to be like, okay, just like pretending I know what's going on when I'm watching it. I'm like, sure, okay, it's from 500 years in the future. Yeah, got that. Like,
Of course.
It was a little
can see through it, but it's fine.
Yeah. There were so many things that they were putting time in front of in this episode that I was kind of like a little bit like, okay, now what are we calling this?
Right. And then they put a lampshade on a lampshade at the end when she's like, it's a time tsunami, but that's not fun. That's bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also I like the part where when they're in trouble in the time rift, they ignite their fuel on fire, which was I think a reference to Galileo 7, the episode from the original series, where Spock does the same in order to signal the Enterprise as the Galileo 7 is going down.
Wow. Deep cut. Well, not really, but like, I'm surprised.
Let's talk about Giorgio, of course, appears again in this show along with Section 31. I wonder if they were... Did I miss a line? Were they following like Burnham around? Because Burnham gets Spock off the planet and she immediately shows up on the Section 31 ship, which sends the plot forward, but I'd have to imagine that that's the last place that Burnham would really want to bring Spock. Like, great, I just got him out of here, and now Section 31 wants to get their hands on him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, didn't they decide to turn him in?
Oh, okay. Like, that's the best thing
or
to
did
do.
I make that up?
No,
Yeah.
you're probably right. Because Mom and Dad have a fight, and then Mom and Dad are also like,
Yeah.
what kind of trouble have you gotten yourself into now? Okay, we got to get out of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have in my notes, excuse me, my notes kind of go chronologically. And so I have in my notes about midway through, Leland seems all right. And then a little later, I've got, oops. And then near the end, I've got double oops. Because, of course, we find out in the episode that Leland does not have good intentions towards Spock and apparently is responsible for the death of Burnham's parents. Discuss.
Not a great guy.
Who is lying about what if he is responsible? And or what did he do? Because like, wasn't it the Klingons that attacked their like? Where were they? I don't know. Her parents.
The Logic Center or something like that, right?
No, I thought the Logic Center was when she was a kid and they got bombed.
Oh, two different. You're right. Yeah, her parents died. Then she was on Vulcan, and the extremists bombed it. Yeah. So we don't. That's something that hasn't been filled in.
So if he killed her parents, because I thought they said that it was the Klingons that attacked her parents thing.
Yeah, maybe it was Section 31 guys in Halloween Spirit Store masks. Klingon masks.
That could be.
So that's not great. Although that does answer a question that was in my mind, which is if we're going to do this Section 31 series, which is nominally a Giorgio series, will, say, Leland be there, and will she be good, or will she be like bad but good, or just bad? And they kind of got us, or they got me at least before, with him sort of making up with Pike in a previous episode. I was like, okay, maybe this guy's not that bad, and Giorgio's like, she's going to be bad. Now I think it's different. I think Leland's not going to make it out of season 2, and Giorgio has shown that she can be, I don't know, kind of pragmatically benevolent in certain cases, like the way that she helps Michael and Scott. And so maybe, not Scott, Michael Spock. Michael Scott, different show. But so maybe going into the Giorgio series, she'll be like, she's bad, but she's good.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to go for like an anti-hero angle.
And if she only knew,
I don't know.
If she only, hey, I just thought of something. We don't know. The mirror universe is totally different. So maybe they knew about Vihari all the time. So they were just having those those Kelpians hang around until their ganglia fell out, and then they just prepare them right there at the table.
Right.
Nobody's got to die.
Right.
Sneaky retcon, you guys. Nice. Anybody else have anything else that they wanted to say? Anything that they were just burning a hole in their brain about this episode?
I mean, honestly, I'm a little underwhelmed by the final reveal of my son.
Yeah.
Plus, in last week they had the teaser with him in it. So the second they were in the cave and we heard him, it was like immediately like, oh, it's Spock. Time for the scene that we saw last week. And I was like, oh, that was that wasn't really what I wanted out of this. But obviously he's crazy, so they're going somewhere with it. So I want to trust.
Well, we expect to see, Michael find herself in a situation and somebody's got a gun on her, and then a hand grabs the shoulder of the guy who's holding the gun, and the guy collapses to the ground, and then he steps into frame and cocks an eyebrow and says, fascinating. But, I like the fact that if that's what we expected, they didn't want to give us that. So this is something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is fascinating, and to coin a phrase, that they are going to do this apparently next week. They're going to go right into Talos 4, like right away. Like this thing that has been a part of the mythology since the Cage, and I guess really since the Menagerie. And so much so that, they've got this rule that comes up every once in a while that it's like that's the one rule they have that still has the death penalty. And they're like, screw it, let's do it. If we're gonna use every part of the cage buffalo, we're gonna take every single piece from there. And so who knows what could happen now? Like we could meet Vina. Like who knows? Like we could meet other characters. We could meet the purple chicken. Like I want to see that purple chicken. I'm gonna go the whole way. Mika, was anything? Mika?
Yeah. Well, like I think you mentioned this when we were the time tsunami is happening, and it's like there's Kaminar right there, and it's like we're just leaving you. Bye bye. Yeah. I mean, aren't you kind of worried about the planet and like the effects of this time tsunami?
Denmark, get us out of here.
Yeah. Okay. I know. Like, aren't you going to stick around?
Yeah.
They do so much just like full warp away from problems in this show, and every time I'm like, is it safe to just jump to warp right next to a time rift? Like, are you going to stretch it or something? Yeah. Like, what?
When the rift is next to a planet, Kaminar babies.
What's the science? Yeah.
Yes.
Gonna go back and they're all little baby Kelpians. I wanted to point out, and not to criticize, but just to once again point out the continuing just breathtaking authority problems on Disco. Once again, Tilly and Stamets come up with a solution, and they just go running off to the transporter to just, get it done. And nobody calls Saru and is like, hey, we got this idea. We're going to use the transporter, so that's what's going on if the transporter suddenly comes on. Like on other shows, they'll be sitting on the bridge and, Data's suddenly like, somebody's using the transporter or somebody's grabbed a shuttlecraft. But everybody on Disco just kind of just is a genius. So they come up with an idea and they run off and take care of it on their own, right away.
I totally didn't think about that. And then they're back. So then they're back on the bridge later and they're like, Stamets is over there. And he's like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing now.
Right, yeah. I know Saru's the substitute, but you have to treat him like your regular teacher.
He just never gets to be a real captain. Every time Pike leaves, everyone's just running around behind his back. Oh, no.
And there was one more nerdy thing that I wanted to point out, and that's we see this weird pattern on the computer screen and then later with Dr. Robot, Ariam, when she's being taken over. We see these 3 red dots that represent, we don't know, and they look to me like Brainiac, Brainiac in DC Comics always has those dots on his head like that, and that pattern usually.
That's funny.
So maybe that's
an interesting coincidence.
An homage, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we've already been talking about what's coming up or what we think is, so let's go to our forward-looking segment and ask ourselves what's coming up. What are the lights? Who is the angel? What's going to happen with Spock? What other things will they put time in front of? Let's speculate on what we think is coming up in Season 2. Mika, got any wild pitches for us?
I guess I want to see more from Spock, and I want to see more than just incoherent ramblings.
Me too.
Principles of logic. It's not incoherent.
Yeah, okay, all right. But I was kind of hoping that the doctors at Session 31 would actually be able to help him and not hurt him, but he seems like he's still out of it. And I'm kind of curious as to what's going to happen once Burnham brings him to Talos 4, although she says she wants to know what's in his mind, and she seems to ask the Talosians if she can hear it. So,
right. And she doesn't know, but they're very powerful telepaths, so they would probably be able to pull that, whatever it is, out and show it to her.
Yeah, and I bet it's the Red Angel, and I bet, there's some... We don't know exactly what the connection is between Spock and the Red Angel, but it's going to be significant. That's what I think.
And if 31 wants to scramble his brain, then they're trying to hide something, it seems like. So they know more than they're letting on.
About the Red Angel?
Possibly.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe about metal squids?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Also, just what's wrong with him? Yeah, you know what I mean? He's in the cave, he's kind of just rambling, and then later he's quiet, and then he's half conscious when they're escaping.
Yeah.
But was that did they put him under, or what? I want to know what his issue is. Why is he like that?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. It seems like, I don't know, what could do that to Spock? That's a good question. And it just seems like I feel like he's perceived something that even he can't handle. Maybe it would have killed a normal person, but his amazing mental capacity is trying to contain it, but it's sort of leaking out of his ear, sort of. And so he's just trying to get his mind around it. And also there might be an element too of it being something that is disorganized. I really liked it's clear that the writers of this show are big time fans of the show, and they are really not. Yeah, there's drops and there's little Easter eggs, but they're really going into the mythology and trying to find new connections between things. And we've got this line from 50 years ago about Alice in Wonderland or something, and we find out that Amanda reads this to them, and Sarek hates it because it's silly Earth literature, but it's a novel about chaos. Everything that happens to Alice doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Everybody's running around a rock, and it's off with her head, and the cat disappears and his smile stays, and none of it makes any sense, and it's it's anti-logic. And so I wonder if that will have something to do with whatever the information is that he is trying to understand.
You know what's so weird is that we were literally today in my Victorian history class, we were studying Alice in Wonderland. And I was sitting in class like, yes.
The text itself or the historical sort of circumstances around it?
Kind of both. So we were talking about like children and like family life sort of, in, you know, the Victorian era. And so we were using, Alice as like an example, like if Lewis Carroll writes her like this, or she acts like this, or she like every Victorian child is supposed to be able to recite this poem, but like Alice gets stuff wrong. Like, what does that mean? And like, you know, normal history student stuff.
Okay, cool. Because, I mean, not to get too detailed, but Lewis Carroll, there's an interesting story there about him and his subject. But look that up on your own, Wikipedia. Okay, well, I think that is going to be it for our show this week. So thanks for joining us, listeners. If you like what you hear, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at EISTPOD for updates and to get notified when new episodes of both Enterprising Individuals and this show, Discoverage, are released. You can tweet to us on the show by using the hashtag Discoverage, or you can email us at eistpod@gmail.com. And when you're on the internet, why not head to your listening platform of choice and subscribe to the show, give us a rating and a review if you think of it, because it really helps us. Also, we've got merch. You can check out our t-shirts available on our TeePublic store. Search for Just Enough Trope on TeePublic. That's our parent network for our snazzy Trek wear. We got phone cases and mugs and everything you want. So if you really want to support the show, do that. Stop by our Patreon page as well at patreon.com/EISTpod. And as always, if you like this show, tell a friend. Discoverage will return on March 7th for the next episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. That episode, as far as we know, is called If Memory Serves. And, of course, we know that it will ostensibly involve the Telosians and Talos 4, so I am definitely looking forward to that. In the meantime, you can check out our main show, Enterprising Individuals, at enterprisingindividuals.com. Every Wednesday, I and a guest will discuss in excruciating detail a selected episode from a Star Trek series. We also have news from the Trek sphere, updates on Star Trek Discovery, and interviews with special guests. We just released an episode featuring my interview with Lyda Gold of Current Affairs magazine. I talk with Lyda about the importance of utopian fiction, the implausibility of Star Trek's bright and shiny future, and learning to love Star Trek Discovery. Lyda wrote an article last year called The Dismal Frontier, which was a strident but fair takedown of Discovery's first season. So if you want to hear some actual healthy criticisms of Disco and not the usual trolling, I suggest you brace yourself and check that out online. You can find my episode with Lyda at enterprisingindividuals.com or on your podcatcher of choice. Mika, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, at justenoughtrope.com and Just Enough Trope on Twitter and Facebook.
Awesome. And what is coming up on Just Enough Trope?
Yeah, well, we're really psyched about the new Captain Marvel movie that's coming up next week. It's going to be released in theaters. So in preparation for that, we are actually going to be reading some Captain Marvel related comics, including like her first appearance in the comics where she's actually Ms. Marvel.
Ms. Marvel. Yes.
Yes. Because it was the 70s. Yes.
Right.
Exactly. So kind of looking at a deeper history of the character as well. There have been many different people who have had the moniker of Captain Marvel or of Ms. Marvel, Marvel this, Marvel that. So kind of doing a deeper dive into that as well before the film actually comes out.
That sounds great. So people can check that out at justenoughtrope.com. And Ella, thanks as always. Where can people find your show, Generations Geek?
generationsgeek.com and Generations Geek on Twitter and Instagram. And I was actually like 6 people away from getting into the red carpet for the UK premiere of Captain Marvel, and they cut it off.
No
They're
kidding.
like, sorry, it's full.
Goodness.
No, yeah. Like I was in line and I was like, oh my God, we're all going to get in. And then there were like me and like maybe 10 other people, and they were like, sorry, like it's full. Like, we're not going to have room. And we were like, oh, cool. We'll just go home.
Well, when I hear about 6 random accidents in London, I will look the other way.
Yeah.
Get you bumped up in the queue there. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for listening, listeners, and we are signing off. This is Aaron for Mika and Ella saying live long and prosper.